she whispered. "We have to stop." But I went upstairs anyway. "I'll pretend you're just helping me," she said, but the way she looked at me said otherwise. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. No drum roll, no flashing lights, just a sentence, a glance, a pause that lingers too long. "My name's Jake. I'm 25. I work in marketing, live a modest life, and until a few months ago had never crossed a line I couldn't uncross. But all of that changed when I moved in with my best friend, Kevin. Rent had spiked, my roommate bailed, and I was drowning in bills. Kevin, always the loyal ride or die since college football days, offered me his guest room. 'My folks won't care,' he said. And I believed him. What I didn't expect was Michelle, his mom. She wasn't just a mom. She wasn't just Kevin's caretaker or a woman in the background. She was stunning, graceful, blonde, poised with those sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through you. I remembered her vaguely from our school days, always well-dressed, composed, but I hadn't seen her in years. And when I moved in, I figured she'd say hello, then go about her life. She didn't. It started on the second day. Kevin was out, and I was in the kitchen, bleary-eyed, drinking bad coffee. Michelle walked in wearing a robe, short, gray, soft. Hair damp, skin glowing. She said morning like it was nothing. Then added casually, "I was hoping you'd still be here. There's a box in the garage. I need help moving to the attic." I agreed. Of course I did. We walked to the attic. She turned, smiled, almost too sweet, and said, "I'll pretend you're just helping me." Just helping her. But the way her lips curved, the pause in her words, the look in her eyes, it didn't feel like just help. It felt like a signal. That moment stayed with me. Haunted me. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't yet. What began as casual favors became charged silences. Glances held too long, words that lingered like fingerprints. And before I knew it, I wasn't just Kevin's friend anymore. I was the guy his mom looked at when she thought no one else was watching, and I watched her right back. The first time something almost happened wasn't the attic. It was the bedroom. Hers. It was the next day. Kevin had already left for work, and I was standing in the kitchen, still in gym shorts and a tank top, gulping down water after a run. Michelle came downstairs fully dressed this time, jeans-fitted top hair, brushed makeup, minimal but polished. But the way she looked at me made my skin tighten. "The curtain rod in my room came loose," she said. "Think you could fix it?" I followed her up the stairs, tools in hand and stomach turning. I told myself it was nothing, just helping. Her room smelled faintly of lavender and something warmer like citrus and vanilla. Her bed was made one corner tucked perfectly. I climbed the stepladder, adjusted the rod easily. It took less than a minute, but when I turned around, she was right there. Too close. She didn't flinch, didn't step back. "I've been alone in this house more than you probably think," she said, almost like she was telling a secret. Her eyes didn't waver. "You don't seem like someone who minds being alone," I offered, trying to keep things light. "You'd be surprised." She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The tension between us was thick, alive. But nothing happened. Not yet. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept going over the details, how close she stood, the way her voice dipped just slightly, how the room felt smaller with her in it. It wasn't just me. I knew that now. We were building towards something. The line wasn't crossed, but it was trembling. A few days later, Kevin had a date. He left around 6 p.m., tossed me a "don't wait up," and disappeared out the door. By 7, the house was quiet. Michelle came into the kitchen as I was making a sandwich. She wore black jeans and a beige sweater, simple, elegant, and devastating. "You don't cook much, do you?" she teased. "Not unless sandwiches count." She smiled and poured herself a glass of wine. "They're better than nothing." "Want one?" I wasn't a wine guy, but I said yes anyway. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. We talked Kevin's old football stories, her job at a non-profit, how tired she was lately. There was something in her voice, something heavy. And then she said, "Do you ever feel like you're just surviving?" I nodded slowly. "All the time." She turned to face me. "I've been married for 22 years, Jake. Do you know how many of those I actually felt like I had a partner I didn't answer? I didn't need to." She laughed once, quiet, bitter. "Sorry. I don't know why I'm saying this. It's fine, I said. You don't have to pretend with me. And just like that, something shifted. Can you help me with something upstairs? She asked. Same tone. Casual. But I heard it differently now. We went up to her bedroom. The light was soft, the lamp casting shadows that made the room feel warmer, smaller. She pointed to the dresser. The drawers stuck. I pulled it open with one hand. It wasn't stuck. We both knew it. I turned around. She was standing there, arms crossed, not in defense, but like she was holding herself still. Michelle, I said, my voice lower than I expected. We should stop whatever this is before it starts. She didn't move. Do you want to stop? She asked. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. Because I don't. The space between us vanished. I could feel her breath, her warmth. My heart was pounding so loud it was all I could hear. Then she kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't accidental. It was real, slow, certain. And I kissed her back. There was no hesitation, no fear, only the fire of something long denied, finally let loose. Her hands slid over my shoulders. Mine found her waist. She backed toward the bed, then paused. Fingers on my chest. Jake, she whispered. I'm not drunk. I'm not confused. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know I said. So do I. What happened next didn't feel like a mistake. It felt inevitable. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't an accident. It was two people crossing a line with full awareness of the cost and doing it anyway. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't have to. Her body told me everything about the years she'd buried under routine neglect silence. And when I finally slipped back into the guest room at 2:17 a.m., barefoot and breathless, I laid on the bed. With one thought circling through my mind, I don't regret it. In fact, I couldn't wait for it to happen again. The next few weeks felt like walking a tightrope over a fire, every step delicate, every glance heavy with risk. Michelle and I didn't talk about what happened that first night. We didn't have to. The way she looked at me the next morning, the subtle brush of her fingers as she passed me the coffee, the smile that lingered too long, all of it was louder than words. It became a pattern, a ritual of sorts. Kevin would leave for work or to meet friends, and within minutes, Michelle would send a message. Just a few words, I'm making tea, or can you help me with something upstairs, but I knew exactly what she meant. One night, she sat on the edge of her bed, wearing a soft sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder. She handed me a mug of tea I didn't drink. I set it down, leaned in, and kissed her without hesitation. Her hands found the back of my neck, pulling me in closer. It was slow, intimate, and somehow heavier than before. Not just lust longing. What scared me wasn't how easily we hit it. It was how natural it started to feel. She was always careful, always calm. But when we were alone, that composure would melt away, revealing something more vulnerable, more desperate. In those moments, I didn't see Kevin's mom. I didn't see the woman I was supposed to avoid. I saw someone who had gone years without being truly seen. And when she looked at me, I saw someone I didn't recognize, someone bold, reckless, and deeply entangled. We talked, too. Mornings when Kevin was still sleeping, afternoons when the house was quiet. She'd sit across from me at the breakfast table, sipping her coffee, barefoot, brushing her toes against mine under the table, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sometimes she'd talk about her nonprofit work, about books she loved, about how little she and her husband spoke anymore. I'm not ashamed, she said one night lying next to me, her voice barely above a whisper. But I am scared. Of what? Of how easy this is. And she was right. That was the terrifying part. It wasn't forced. There were no lies between us, only the lie we lived outside of the bedroom. But time doesn't pause for secrets. And secrets don't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, Kevin came home early from work. I had just stepped out of Michelle's room, fully dressed, but still reeling from what had just happened. I heard the front door slam, and my entire body tensed. I ducked into the hallway, wiped the sweat from my brow, and headed into the kitchen like I'd just come from the bathroom. "Dude!" Kevin called out. "What's up?" I smiled too quickly. "Not much. Just a lazy day." He nodded, oblivious. Michelle never came downstairs that evening. She texted me later. We need to be more careful, I replied, agreed. But more careful didn't mean stop. The danger only made it feel more intense. A few days later, her husband came home unexpectedly. I was out on the porch when I saw his car pull into the driveway 2 days early. I went inside immediately, caught Michelle's eye in the living room. Her face went pale. She mouthed something I couldn't read. That night, there was no message, no stolen glances, just silence. We didn't speak for 3 days, and in those 3 days, I realized something I didn't want to admit, not to myself, not to anyone. I missed her, not just her body, her. One night, Kevin and I were watching a movie. Michelle was upstairs pretending to sleep. I kept glancing at the hallway, waiting for something, anything, a look, a message, a sign, but nothing came. And I started to feel something deeper than desire. I started to feel the ache of wanting someone who could never really be mine. Michelle and I never talked about love, but the feelings were there, blooming in the cracks, in the way she'd rest her head on my chest, in the way her hand lingered just a second longer than it needed to, in the way she looked at me when I wasn't speaking like she was memorizing me. And then came the question that cracked everything open. We were lying in her bed, the room dark, her breath warm against my shoulder. "If I were single," she whispered, "would you stay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. She didn't press. But that question didn't leave me for days. It followed me into the guest room, into my dreams, into the way I looked at her when Kevin was around and we had to pretend again. I started thinking about her when I was at work, when I was with friends, when I was alone. And that's when I knew I wasn't just entangled. I was falling in love. I kept trying to remind myself of the cost. Kevin was my best friend. I was living under their roof. Her husband, though distant, was still present in the frame of the family. Every choice, every kiss, every silent moment between us was built on a fracture waiting to break wide open. But even knowing all of that, we kept going. Because some people don't need to light a fire. They just need to touch you, and suddenly you're burning. I always believed you could outrun the fallout if you moved fast enough, if you were careful, smart, disciplined. But secrets don't work that way. They don't wait for the right time. They unravel, slowly, painfully. It started with the silence. Michelle stopped texting me for 2 days. No, I'm making tea. No casual glances over coffee. No quiet requests for help upstairs. At first, I thought maybe Kevin had been home more. Maybe she was just playing it safe. But the silence felt different this time. Cold, deliberate, almost like she was pulling away. Then Friday came. Kevin was headed out of town for the weekend hiking trip with his cousins. He left just after 6, tossing a duffel bag in his trunk and shouting a goodbye over his shoulder. I stayed behind, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending I wasn't waiting for something, anything from Michelle. But the hours passed. The house stayed still. I didn't hear her steps. No lights turned on upstairs, no creak of the floorboards, just silence. I couldn't take it. By 9, I walked upstairs, my breath shallow, my footsteps too loud. Her door was closed. I stood there for a second, unsure of whether I should knock. Then I did. She opened the door after a moment. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, an old hoodie, no smile, just a quiet, worn-out look. "Come in," she said. We sat on the edge of her bed, shoulder to shoulder but not touching. And that's when she said it. "I think we have to stop." It hit like a blade. She didn't cushion it, didn't ease me in. She said it plainly, and it felt like the floor shifted under me. "I figured," I said after a long pause. She stared at her hands, twisting her fingers together like she was trying to tie herself to something steady. "Someone's going to get hurt," she said. "Eventually. And it won't just be us." I nodded. Because I knew, but it still hurt. "I never expected this," she said. "I wasn't looking for this. Not with you. Not with anyone." "Neither was I said. She looked over at me, eyes tired. "I care about you. Probably more than I should. But we're playing with fire." "I know," I whispered. "I don't want to sneak around anymore. I don't want to lie. Every time I look Kevin in the eyes." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. And my husband, Even if he barely notices me anymore, he's still my husband. Her voice cracked just enough to shatter something in me. She wasn't ashamed of what we'd done, but she was terrified of what it could become. "I'm not ashamed," she repeated. "I needed to feel something again. You gave me that. You reminded me I'm still alive." Then she looked up. "But we can't keep pretending this doesn't have a cost." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, so I just nodded. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "No," I said, eyes locked on hers. "Not a single second." She nodded. "Good. Because I don't either, but I want us to end this before it turns into something ugly. Before we get caught. Before we destroy everything." We stood up at the same time. The moment felt final, like the closing scene of a movie we didn't want to end. She opened the door but didn't step aside. Her hand hovered for a second like she wanted to touch my face, say something else, rewind time, but she didn't. "Promise me one thing," she said. "Anything. If you ever look back on this, don't look back with guilt. Look back with whatever this was." I swallowed hard. "I promise." Then I walked away. I didn't look back. That night I packed my bags. I told Kevin I'd found a cheap studio apartment downtown and needed my own space again. He didn't question it. Maybe he knew. Maybe he didn't want to know. I moved out the next morning. Michelle wasn't there when I left. And just like that, it was over. Or it was supposed to be. 11 months passed. I didn't see her, didn't speak to her, didn't text. I tried not to think about her. I buried myself in work, took new clients, went on a few dates that never led anywhere. I told myself I'd moved on. But she was always there, just beneath the surface. A song, a scent, a fleeting image in a crowd. And suddenly, I was back in that house on that bed with her. Then one Saturday afternoon, I walked into a cafe I'd never been to before. I was scrolling my phone, half listening to the barista call out orders when I heard it, Jake. Not hey, not excuse me, just my name. I looked up. Michelle. She looked the same, just a little more tired around the eyes. Same blonde hair, same soft grace. "Wow," I said, standing a little too fast. "Hi." "Hi," she echoed, smiling, uncertain. "Mind if I sit?" I motioned to the chair across from me. "Of course." She folded her hands in her lap. There was a long silence, not awkward, just full. "I've thought about texting you more times than I can count," she said finally. "I know the feeling. I meant what I said that day," she continued. "I didn't regret anything. Neither did I." Her voice dropped. "I still don't." Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her phone, and slid it across the table. On the screen was a message typed but unsent. "No one's home tomorrow." I stared at it. And everything, the feelings, the danger, the gravity came rushing back. "I've tried to move on," she whispered, "but I don't think it ever really left me." I looked into her eyes. Me neither. We sat there, staring at each other across a table, our coffee going cold, the world humming around us like none of it mattered. And maybe in that moment it didn't. Because some stories don't really end. They pause. They get buried under the noise of everyday life work distance logic, but the pull never goes away. Not when it's real. Not when it shakes you the way she did. Michelle and I never promised forever. What we had was a secret carved in time, built in glances and quiet nights, in everything we never dared say out loud. And yet there we were. Almost a year later, sitting across from each other like no time had passed at all. "If we do this again," I said quietly, "we can't lie to ourselves." She met my eyes. We never did. That's what made it real. The next day I went to her house. No excuses, no pretending. When she opened the door, there were no words, just a look, that same soft sadness in her eyes, that same heat in her silence. I stepped inside. She closed the door, and for better or worse, we were back. No labels, no future promises, just two people who couldn't let go, and maybe deep down never really wanted to. If you've ever found yourself drawn to someone you shouldn't have, if you've ever kept a secret that changed you, if you've ever tried to move on only to realize part of you stayed behind, you're not alone. These stories aren't about perfect endings. They're about the moments we carry, the ones that shape us, haunt us, define us. If this one made you feel something, share it in the comments. Tell your story, or just say me too. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because we don't just tell stories, we speak the truths most people are afraid to admit. This channel is for you, for the complicated, the real, the unforgettable. We're not here to judge, we're here to feel, together.